Sweetheart, the soup kitchen is 3 blocks east.
One call, 2 minutes. If I'm wrong, I'll leave.
I don't interrupt partner meetings for people who walk in off the street. Security, go to the reception desk. We have someone who isn't allowed in. Don't touch my chair.
Ma'am, I need to park.
She's not allowed. Film this.
Eleanor, Carol.
She is the single largest stakeholder in this firm.
You didn't need to know who I was. You just needed to treat a stranger decently.
Name. Sweetheart, the soup kitchen is 3 blocks east. I have a 9:15 with the partners on the 32nd floor. Name. A meeting. That's adorable. This elevator is for clients, not charity cases. Check the visitor log. Hargrove. Ma'am, I don't work for you. Name. This is a private building. You need to leave. Get your hands off that chair. She's the one who owns it. Name. All of it. 1 hour of silence. One sentence that finished a career. Have you ever been judged worthless by someone who had no idea what they were looking at? Name. 3 hours earlier, the city was still deciding whether to wake up. Portland in November runs gray and wet, the kind of gray that soaks into the brick and stays there until March. Name. Rain tapped the windows of a corner apartment on the 9th floor of a converted warehouse in the Pearl District. Name. Inside, the smell of dark roast coffee drifted from a small kitchen that had seen better days, and the woman sitting in front of her closet was taking her time. Name. On the left side hung the armor, tailored wool in charcoal and deep burgundy, Italian cashmere, the kind of wardrobe that made venture partners lean forward before she said a single word. Name. On the right side hung a fleece-lined jacket, 8 years old, soft at the cuffs, a thing she had picked up at a REI clearance rack during leaner years and never been able to justify replacing. Name. She reached right. Eleanor Hargrove was 44 years old, the daughter of a middle school librarian and a long-haul truck driver who had grown up in a 2-bedroom house in Beaverton, where the heat ran on a monthly gamble. Name. She had been the first person in her family to finish a 4-year degree, and she had done it in 3, working 30 hours a week at a UPS sorting facility to cover what her scholarship did not. Name. By 31, she had co-founded a logistics technology company out of a borrowed office in a strip mall on Powell Boulevard. Name. By 36, she had sold it. She did not talk about the number publicly. What she did with the number, she talked about even less. Name. A holding company. A real estate portfolio. Equity stakes in 12 firms across 5 states, acquired quietly, announced never. Her name existed in incorporation filings and wire transfer records, and the kind of databases that lawyers charged $400 an hour to search. Name. It did not exist in the business magazine she sometimes saw in airport lounges. She had made a deliberate choice, years ago, to build walls instead of platforms. Name. The wheelchair was a consequence she had not chosen. A spinal cord injury 4 years ago, the result of a surgery to correct something else, the kind of outcome the doctors had called a complication, and she had called the rest of her life. Name. She had spent 8 months learning it, the geometry of curbs and doorways, and how much space a human body requires when it is no longer vertical. Name. She had spent the following 3 years building something faster than grief, which was a track record that made the wheelchair invisible in every room that mattered. Name. In the rooms that did not know her, it was the first thing they saw. Name. 6 days ago, in a conference room on the 41st floor of a building she now half-owned, Eleanor had signed the final documents, completing her acquisition of a controlling stake in Meridian Pacific Ventures, a Portland-based private equity firm managing $2. Name. $3 billion in assets. The founding partner, Thomas Bellamy, 71 years old, and 3 years past the point where he had wanted to retire, had shaken her hand with both of his and said he was glad it was her. Name. The wire had cleared Thursday morning. The official announcement was scheduled for Monday at noon. That gave her one window. Name. One Monday morning where she could walk into the building, roll in, as the person she actually was, which was nobody anybody in that lobby had bothered to learn. Name. Her grandmother had told her once, sitting on a back porch in Eugene, watching the rain come in from the coast, that you can always tell what a business believes about itself by how it treats the persons who arrives without an appointment. Name. Eleanor had not forgotten that. Before her name went on any letterhead, she wanted to see what the building looked like from the outside, from the level of the wheel. Name. So she put on the old fleece jacket, tucked a manila envelope under her armrest, and rolled out into the Portland rain. Name. The cold was the particular Pacific Northwest variety, not sharp but persistent, the kind that finds the gaps in your collar and settles in. Name. Rain had slicked the sidewalks to a kind of dull mirror. Her hands worked the push rims in the rhythm she had built up over force, steady and unhurried, the same rhythm she used in board meetings. Name. Block after block, through the Pearl District, until the building came into view. Meridian Pacific occupied the lower 18 floors of a glass tower on NW 11th Avenue. Name. Brushed steel lettering ran above the revolving doors. Through the lobby glass she could see terrazzo floors the color of cream, and a reception desk that floated like an island in the middle of it all, behind a low waterfall feature that ran down a slab of black granite. Name. The kind of lobby designed to make you feel like money was already something that lived here, and you were only visiting. Name. Behind the front desk, Patricia Weld had been working the morning shift at Meridian Pacific for 9 years, 4 months, and 11 days. Name. She knew this because she kept track. She aligned the vase of white calla lilies to the left of her monitor every morning at 7:50, adjusted the angle of her nameplate, and began her watch over 40 feet of travertine like a custom agent who had never once been wrong about someone. Name. She had a system: cashmere coat, briefcase, lanyard, entry-level badge, utility worker, delivery person. She processed each category in under 4 seconds and knew what to do with every one of them. Name. When a man in a charcoal topcoat pushed through the revolving doors at 8:52, her smile arrived before he did. Name. Good morning, Mr. Sanderson. Great to see you. When a woman in scrubs cut through the lobby on her way to the medical clinic on the 3rd floor, Patricia's gaze tracked her to the elevator bank with something several degrees cooler than professional. Name. At 9:04, she glanced up from her monitor. What she saw made her set down her coffee slowly, the way you set something down when your hands need to be free. Name. A black woman in a manual wheelchair was coming through the side access entrance. The woman's jacket was old fleece, worn at the elbows. Name. Her hair was pulled back in a low, practical knot, not the kind of hair that came out of a blow-dry bar. Name. The chair's push rims caught the lobby light, but the chair itself had a scratch across the left armrest, the kind that comes from years of navigating the world was not built for. Name. Under her right arm, she held a manila envelope. Patricia watched those wet wheel marks appear on the terrazzo. She watched them the way a housekeeper watches muddy boots, and she pressed her lips together and straightened her nameplate. Name. The access ramp had a parking cone on it. Someone from the building's property management team had set it there the previous Friday when they were marking a crack in the pavement, and nobody had moved it since. Name. Eleanor had dragged it to one side inch by inch with one hand while holding the wheel with the other. Name. The revolving door, which was the main entrance, had a broken sensor on its left panel and moved too fast for a wheelchair. Name. The side door required a key fob after 8 a.m. She had buzzed the intercom and waited 3 minutes for someone to let her in. Name. She had filed all of it. The lobby was warm and smelled like the lilies on the reception desk, and something faintly like cedar, the air of a place that believed in itself. Name. Her tires made a faint squeak on the terrazzo every 8 feet or so. She watched a cluster of analysts near the coffee station lower their voices. Name. A man in a suit near the elevators looked at her and then looked past her, in the way people look past windows. Name. Eleanor rolled to the desk. The counter came to the level of her collarbone. From Patricia's side, the view would be a head and shoulders, if that. Name. Good morning, Eleanor said. Patricia did not smile. She did not stand. She propped her chin on folded hands and looked at Eleanor the way a teacher looks at a child who has come to the wrong room. Name. Sweetheart, Patricia said. The soup kitchen on Davis does good work. You'll want to go 3 blocks east and turn right. Name. A beat of silence landed on the terrazzo between them. I don't need the soup kitchen. Eleanor kept her voice level. Name. I have a 9:15 with the partners on the 32nd floor. Eleanor Hargrove, Hargrove. Name. A 9:15. Patricia managed to make those 2 words sound like a hospice visit for a joke. On the 32nd floor. Name. Her eyes went from Eleanor's jacket down to the scratched armrest. The way someone reads a receipt they already know they're going to dispute. Name. The 32nd floor is partner-level access. It is not open to walk-ins. Do you have a confirmation email? Name. A badge? Any documentation at all? I have a visitor authorization from Thomas Bellamy's office. Eleanor produced the envelope. She lifted it over the edge of the counter and set it down. Name. Patricia picked it up with the tips of 2 fingers. She turned it over. She set it face down on her desk without opening it. Name. Anyone can get letterhead printed. Patricia said this with the calm authority of someone who had thought about it and reached a considered conclusion. Name. Last month we had a man come in with a forged building badge and a fake meeting confirmation. Walked right up to the 19th floor. Name. The IT team spent 2 weeks on the breach. Eleanor looked at the sealed envelope lying face down on the desk. Name. The authorization was on Meridian Pacific's own paper. Thomas Bellamy's assistant, a woman named Carol Simons, who had worked with him for 17 years, had sent it Friday via courier with a handwritten note. Name. It was sitting 3 inches from Patricia's hand. Call up to the 32nd floor, Eleanor said. 1 call, 2 minutes. Name. If I'm wrong, I leave. Patricia sighed through her nose. A performance for no audience except the one she was building. Name. I don't interrupt partner meetings for people who walk in off the street, she said. I'm so sorry, but that's the policy. Name. She did not sound sorry. She sounded like a woman who had found a policy very useful. There are 9 minutes before the meeting starts, Eleanor said. Name. If you'd like, call reception on 32. Ask for Carol Simons. Tell her Eleanor Hargrove is in the lobby. Name. Carol Simons. Patricia said the name with a mild patience that managed to convey, without saying it, that she believed Eleanor had found this name somewhere and was using it incorrectly. Name. I'm not familiar with that name. She's been with the firm for 17 years. Then I'm sure she's very busy. Name. Patricia unfolded her hands and moved toward her keyboard. I'm going to need you to step back from the desk while I handle the incoming clients. Name. Across the lobby, at the coffee station near the north wall, Darnell Okafor had been making the morning drink run for the 3rd floor sustainability team for the past 6 months. Name. He was 22 years old, 9 months from finishing his environmental science degree at Portland State, and he had been watching the desk since Eleanor rolled in. Name. He noticed the envelope. He noticed it was face down. He noticed that Patricia had not read it. He filled a cup with water, walked across 40 feet of terrazzo, crouched beside the wheelchair, and set it on the arm tray. Name. Cold out there, he said quietly. You okay? Thank you, Eleanor said. She meant it more than he knew. Patricia's voice cut across the lobby like a fire door slamming. Name. Darnell. The coffee station is not a loitering spot. Get back to your assignment before this becomes a conversation with HR. Name. Darnell stood, looked at Patricia, looked at Eleanor, and looked at Patricia again. He went back to the coffee station. Name. He did not go far. He stayed where he could see the desk, and his phone was in his hand. Name. Here is the thing about that moment that nobody in the lobby understood yet. 3 weeks earlier, Darnell had submitted a letter of interest for an entry-level analyst position at Meridian Pacific. Name. He was 3 months from graduation. The rejection came back in 4 days. A form letter, no feedback. Name. Standing at the coffee station, watching a woman be told she belonged at a soup kitchen, he had a feeling he could not quite articulate. The feeling that the filter on the door and the filter on the hiring portal might be the same filter. Name. He opened his phone and texted a friend who worked on the building's shared administrative floor. His friend had the direct line for Carol Simons' name. Back at the desk, Patricia had made a decision. Her system had never failed her in 9 years, 4 months, and 11 days, and she was not going to let it fail her now. Name. The woman at her desk did not fit any category that belonged in this lobby. The policy was clear, and clarity felt very clean. Name. She picked up the desk phone. She pressed a button. She turned her face slightly away from Eleanor as she spoke, but she pitched her voice at exactly the volume that carried across 40 feet of lobby. Name. Security to the front desk, please. We have a non-authorized individual. She hung up and folded her hands and smiled the kind of smile that belongs on a lanyard photo. Name. You made a phone call, Eleanor said. I made the appropriate phone call. Eleanor looked at her for a moment. Name. One of the analysts near the elevator bank had his phone at his side, screen angled in a way that was not quite casual. Name. Your name, Eleanor said. For my records. Patricia laughed, a real laugh, head tilted, genuinely delighted. My name. She reached up and tapped the nameplate. Name. Patricia Weld. No H, and I'd love to see what list you plan to put it on. Spelling matters, Eleanor said. Name. Especially on documents. Patricia did not know why that sentence brushed cold against the back of her neck. She decided she didn't care. Name. She stood up fully, both hands on the desk, and leaned over the high counter to look down at Eleanor directly. Name. I'm going to say this once, she said. This is a private firm in a private building. This lobby is not a public space. Name. You do not have a meeting on the 32nd floor. You do not have an appointment with anyone here. Name. And if you do not leave this desk in the next 90 seconds, I am going to have you removed by security. Name. She let a breath pass. Some of us work for access to rooms like this. We earn it. Those are her options. Name. The sentence hung there. The espresso machine behind the coffee station made a small pressurized hiss into the silence. Somewhere in the back of the lobby, a printer warmed up with a sound like a clearing throat. Name. Eleanor looked at her. The waterfall feature murmured behind the granite. The terrazzo reflected the lobby lights in long, cool ribbons. Name. Okay, Eleanor said quietly. She reached over the edge of the counter, retrieved the sealed envelope, and tucked it back under her armrest. Name. I want your full name and employee number, she said. I'll write down what I need. Patricia's smile widened. By all means, she said. Name. Take notes. The security guard came across the lobby with the deliberate pace of a man who had learned not to move faster than the situation required. Name. His name was Marcus Webb, 53 years old, 24 years retired from the Portland Police Bureau, 3 years at Meridian Pacific. Name. He had a granddaughter he coached soccer for on Saturday mornings, and a back that complained in cold weather. He took one look at the scene, slowed down, and started reading it. Name. The woman in the wheelchair sat with her hands in her lap, folder on her armrest, spine straight, face calm. Name. Not the calm of someone too frightened to react. The calm of someone who was very carefully recording everything. He had seen that calm on detectives and on witnesses and on lawyers during depositions, but not usually in a lobby at 9 in the morning. Name. Patricia came around the desk, heels on travertine, and positioned herself between Marcus and the wheelchair with the assurance of someone who had never lost a lobby dispute. Name. This woman has been creating a disturbance for 20 minutes, she said, loudly enough to update the room. She has no authorization to be in this building. Name. She refuses to leave. She has been harassing my desk staff. She raised her phone, turned it sideways, and held it toward Eleanor like a piece of evidence. Name. And she is now attempting to record me, which is a violation of our client privacy policy. Eleanor had not raised her phone. Name. Her hands were in her lap. Marcus looked at Patricia. He looked at Eleanor. He looked at the sealed envelope on the armrest. Name. He looked at the face-down authorization that had been sitting on the desk. Ma'am, he said to Eleanor, quiet and professional. Name. Is that right? I arrived at 9:04, Eleanor said. I have a 9:15 meeting with the partners on the 32nd floor. Name. I provided a visitor authorization from Thomas Bellamy's office. The receptionist declined to read it or call up to confirm. Name. I asked for the name of the individual I was speaking with. That's the full extent of the disturbance. Marcus glanced at the desk. Name. Glanced at the sealed envelope. One phone call, he said to Patricia. Why didn't we make one phone call? Patricia's chin went up half an inch. Name. Because I am not going to interrupt a partner-level meeting to verify a story that does not hold up under basic review. Name. We have protocols, Marcus. You follow them too. It was the kind of argument that cost nothing to make and everything to lose. Name. Marcus knew it. He also knew what Meridian's morning meetings looked like, and he knew what a partner's assistant's signature on letterhead looked like, and he knew that the authorization on the desk had been set face down by the person who was supposed to read it. Name. But Patricia was senior to him in the building's informal hierarchy, and the meeting was 40 feet away in the head of someone who signed his checks. Name. He exhaled through his nose. Ma'am, he said to Eleanor, I apologize. I'm going to need you to step outside while we make some clarifying calls. Name. He was already reaching for the handles of her wheelchair. Do not touch my chair. Eleanor's voice did not rise. Name. It changed register, the way a thermostat changes setting. It is my chair. Nobody pushes it but me. Marcus pulled his hands back. Name. He had made the right call on that, at least. Patricia stepped into the space his hesitation created. She raised her phone again, camera forward. Name. For the building record, she announced, making sure the room heard. Subject has refused security escort. Subject remains on premises without authorization. Name. Subject is creating a hostile environment for building staff and tenants. She panned the camera across Eleanor, slow and deliberate, holding on the scratched armrest and the worn jacket for an extra beat. Name. For the building record, Eleanor said. It is 9:11 a.m. on November the 18th. I have been in this lobby for 7 minutes. Name. I have not raised my voice. I have not made any threatening statement or gesture. I have asked twice for someone to call the 32nd floor to confirm my appointment. Name. That request has been refused twice. Patricia lowered the phone. Something in the factual precision of the statement irritated her more than anger would have. Name. She wanted flustering. She wanted apology. She wanted the relief of watching someone smaller back down. She got neither. She turned to Marcus. Name. Either she leaves or we call Portland PD and let them handle it. I am done being reasonable. Marcus looked across the lobby. Name. He saw Darnell at the coffee station, phone in hand. He saw 4 other phones at various angles that he chose not to look at directly. Name. He saw the analyst by the elevator who had gone very still. He was reaching for his radio when the elevator chimed. Name. The doors opened and a woman came out at a pace that was wrong for the lobby. Not running, but close. Name. Carol Simons, 61 years old, 44 hours a week, at the same desk for 17 years, in a gray cardigan she wore when she worked through lunch and a look on her face that Marcus had never seen before. Name. Which was the look of a woman who had just been told something she needed to personally confirm with her own eyes. Name. She crossed the lobby in 11 seconds. She stopped 3 feet from the wheelchair. Eleanor, she said. Her voice was not loud, but the lobby went very quiet around it. The way lobbies go quiet when something shifts. Name. Carol, Eleanor said. When your assistant called me, Carol said, and her voice did not quite hold steady. I thought I misunderstood. Name. She looked at Patricia. She looked at the face-down envelope on the desk. She looked at Marcus, whose expression had shifted into something that was going to cause him trouble for a while. Name. I left the meeting, Carol. I left the partners' meeting. Thomas is going to meet you upstairs. He asked me to come down myself. Name. She bent at the waist, slightly, and then stopped herself and looked at Eleanor again. Are you all right? Eleanor looked at her for a moment. Name. Then she looked across the lobby. The analyst by the elevator had put his phone away. The envelope was still on the desk, still face down. Name. Darnell was still at the coffee station with his phone in his hand, and an expression that was careful and very attentive. Name. I'm going to be better, Eleanor said, in about 15 minutes. She turned her chair toward the elevator and began to move. Name. Carol fell into step beside her. The lobby was so quiet that when they reached the elevator and Carol pressed the button, the soft mechanical chime of the doors opening sounded like a gavel. Name. Upstairs. 4 minutes earlier, the morning had broken open quietly. Carol had been pouring water at the credenza when her phone buzzed. Name. A text from an unknown number that turned out to belong to the friend of a sustainability intern in the coffee station downstairs. Name. The message read, "Woman in wheelchair being denied lobby access says she has 9:15 with Bellamy. Name Eleanor Hargrove." Name. Is this real? Carol had looked at her phone for 3 seconds. Then she had walked to Thomas Bellamy's chair at the head of the conference table, bent down, and said 4 words in his ear. Name. He's been asked not to stand abruptly in meetings due to his blood pressure. He stood abruptly. He sent Carol downstairs and followed in 90 seconds. Name. When the elevator opened on the lobby level, Thomas Bellamy was right behind the doors. 71 years old, white-haired, wearing the same blue blazer he wore on Mondays, and something on his face that Eleanor had never seen there in 8 months of negotiation, which was something close to shame. Name. Eleanor. He stepped forward. He took her hand and held it in both of his, which was how he had sealed their deal 6 days ago, and which now felt like a different gesture. Name. I owe you an explanation and an apology before we go upstairs. You don't owe me an explanation yet, Eleanor said. Name. But there are some people in this lobby you might want to address first. Bellamy turned. His eyes moved across the room, the way a man's eyes move when he is doing arithmetic he does not want to do. Name. He took in Patricia, still behind the desk, still holding her phone. He took in Marcus, standing with his hands at his sides, and an expression of concentrated neutral. Name. He took in the 4 phones that were not quite pointing anywhere, and the 7 people who were not quite looking anywhere in particular. Name. He walked to the desk. Patricia, he said. His voice was quiet. Mr. Bellamy, I was following the building protocol for unauthorized individuals. Name. This woman, Bellamy said, and his voice did not rise, is Eleanor Hargrove. She is the founder and managing director of Hargrove Capital Partners. Name. She completed the acquisition of a 47% controlling stake in this firm on Tuesday of last week. She has a scheduled meeting with the full partnership this morning, which she was invited to by me in writing on Friday. Name. He paused. She is, as of last Tuesday, the single largest stakeholder in this building, in this firm, in the desks and the chairs, and the calla lilies on your counter. Name. In your paycheck, Patricia. She is in the chain that signs your paycheck. The lobby held its breath. Patricia's phone lowered by about 6 inches. Name. I didn't know, she said. Her voice had changed. The professional tenor was gone. What was left was something small and surprised. Name. I didn't know who she was. If anyone had told me who she was, I would never have. I know, Eleanor said. Name. She had rolled up behind Bellamy without anyone noticing. That's the problem, she said. Not the only problem, but the first one. Name. You didn't need to know who I was. You needed to treat a stranger decently. One of those requires information. Name. The other requires nothing. You couldn't manage the free one. Patricia opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Name. The General Counsel of Meridian Pacific. A woman named Diane Cho, who had been on the 32nd floor during all of this, and had come down the moment she got Carol's message, was already standing at the edge of the desk taking notes, with the particular handwriting speed of someone calculating professional exposure. Name. At 10:14 a.m., Patricia Weld was escorted to a small conference room on the 6th floor. A cardboard cup of water sat on the table. Name. An HR representative sat across from her with a legal pad. I followed protocol, Patricia said. She had been saying it for 11 minutes, to whoever would listen in different configurations. Name. I have been running this desk for 9 years, and I know what an unauthorized individual looks like. What I did not know, what nobody told me, was who she was. Name. That's not my fault. That is a failure of communication from the top. The HR representative wrote this down. The protocol, she said carefully, does not include setting a visitor authorization face down without reading it. Name. That was a judgment call. The protocol does not include calling security before attempting to verify through a single phone call to the 32nd floor. Name. That was a judgment call. The protocol does not include recording a visitor on your personal phone while suggesting she investigate the soup kitchen as an alternative destination. Name. Patricia looked at the wall. The protocol, she said, exists because people abuse this lobby. The HR representative looked at her notes. Name. 3 other complaints in the past 4 years, she said. A woman with a service dog who was asked to use the freight elevator. Name. A deliveryman with a speech impediment she had, according to a written witness account, imitated at the front desk. A teenager who came in asking to speak with someone about an internship, who was given wrong directions and left without being assisted. Name. Patricia said nothing. What she had said in the lobby, which was that people in this line of work make judgment calls every day, had been recorded by Darnell from across the coffee station with his phone's audio capture running. Name. The timestamp was 9:09 a.m. It was already in the HR file. Some apologies live in a person's chest waiting to get out. Name. Patricia's never found the door. She left the building that afternoon, with her personal items in a paper bag and her parking validation for the last time, and the argument she was rehearsing in her head was still the one about protocol and reasonable security measures, and how no one could have expected her to know. Name. She gave a statement to a local business journalist 3 weeks later in which she described herself as a scapegoat and the situation as a coordinated ambush. Name. The journalist wrote a piece. The piece did not land the way she intended. Marcus Webb sat with the HR team for 37 minutes. Name. He did not bring a representative. He set his radio on the table and told them everything in the order it happened, including the part where he had been about to put his hands on the chair handles. Name. She asked me not to, he said, and she was right to ask. I should not have been reaching for that chair. Name. I was making an assumption about what she needed based on the fact that she was in it. He paused. Name. I should have made the phone call, he said. One call upstairs. That's all it was. Patricia told me it would cost us both our jobs to interrupt the morning meeting. Name. That was not a good enough reason, and I knew it wasn't while she was saying it. Name. The review board noted that Marcus Webb had been given false information by a supervisor-level colleague, that he had not initiated contact, that he had accepted correction from the subject when it was offered, and that he had provided the most complete and unembellished account of any party involved. Name. He kept his job. He became the story every new security hire at Meridian Pacific heard on their first morning. Name. At 11:40, the full partnership meeting adjourned. The operational transition was scheduled to begin in 60 days. Eleanor moved it to 30. Name. In the elevator going down, Thomas Bellamy said he had spent 31 years building the firm's reputation, and that mornings like this one spent it like a maxed-out card. Name. He said he was glad the majority stake was going to someone who had spent enough time on the other side of closed doors to know what they looked like from the outside. Name. Eleanor looked at the elevator numbers and let the silence do the work for her. When she came back through the lobby at 12:07, the parking cone was gone from the access ramp. Name. Someone had moved it in a hurry and stood it in the corner behind the building's recycling station, where it leaned against the wall like it was trying not to be noticed. Name. She noticed it. The temporary desk staff on the front counter were nervous and apologetic and excessively helpful, which was its own kind of discomfort. Name. At the coffee station, Darnell was refilling the grounds with his back to the room. She rolled over. Darnell Okafor, she said. Name. He turned. His expression was careful and prepared for something he couldn't predict. The water was the right call, she said. Name. Thank you. He nodded once, awkward and genuine. I saw the envelope, he said. She didn't read it. I know. Name. Eleanor paused. You have a letter of interest in the hiring system. Entry-level analyst role. I pulled it this morning before the meeting. Name. He went still. The rejection was automated, she said. It was triggered by a filter that screened out incomplete applications. Name. Yours wasn't incomplete. There was a data formatting error in the upload system on our end. We have 17 letters affected by the same error. Name. Legal is fixing it this week. His application would be reviewed properly. She rolled toward the door. You did the job right this morning, she said, without turning. Name. That's what we're looking for. The video posted at 1:14 that afternoon, not Patricia's video. Patricia's phone had cracked when it hit the travertine and the footage was grainy and time-stamped incorrectly, and the HR team had it in an evidence folder before she left the building. Name. The video that posted belonged to a woman named Caitlin, 26 years old, there for a freelance client meeting. Name. Who had watched the entire thing from a leather club chair near the waterfall feature and kept her phone at knee height and her face completely neutral for 8 minutes and 43 seconds of footage. Name. The clip she posted was 41 seconds. It started with the envelope being set face down on the desk without being opened. Name. It ended with a gray-haired man in a blue blazer saying the words majority stakeholder while the woman in the wheelchair sat exactly where she had been sitting, in the same jacket, in the same calm. Name. The caption read, she already owned the building. They tried to throw her out of it. By 6 p.m. Name. It had 93,000 views. By Tuesday morning, it had broken 2 million. By Thursday, it had been on the evening news in 3 cities and been shared across 3 continents in 7 languages, several of which included commentary in the comment threads about whether this kind of thing surprised anyone. Name. The answer, mostly, was no, and that more than the video itself was the thing Eleanor sat with on Thursday morning in her office, with a cup of coffee she had let go cold. Name. She gave one statement to the media on Wednesday. She did not raise her voice. She did not frame it as victory. Name. What happened to me is ordinary, she said. I want to be very clear about that. The only part that is not ordinary is that the woman in the wheelchair turned out to own the building. Name. Most of the time, the woman in the wheelchair just leaves. I am less interested in the fact that one person was rude to me than in the question of what kind of building made her think that was fine. Name. She paused. Watch what we do next. The formal review ran 15 days, because Eleanor insisted it run properly, with due process and documentation, and no conclusions reached before the evidence was complete. Name. What it found was not one bad morning. In addition to the 3 complaints on file, name. The review recovered an internal email chain from 2 years earlier, in which Patricia described applicant with a visible prosthetic as a liability risk and suggested to a hiring manager that the role required, quote, someone more physically suited to the demands of a client-facing position. Name. The hiring manager had forwarded the email up with a question mark. Nobody had answered it. Name. There was a log of service entrance redirections from a door Patricia had used for anyone arriving by delivery vehicle, including, on one occasion, a Meridian partner who had arrived by cargo bike and was sent around back before she recognized him. Name. And there were 22 incident reports filed against a coffee station barista over 4 years, each one citing vague policy violations, each one dated within 3 to 5 days of a documented interaction in which the barista had assisted someone Patricia had been unhelpful toward. Name. The pattern in the file was a fingerprint, clear, consistent, and completely invisible to anyone who had not been looking for it. Name. Patricia Weld was terminated for cause. She left on a Tuesday morning, which was not a Monday and not a Friday, just an ordinary Tuesday, because Eleanor had been specific. Name. Not a spectacle. The process. The luxury executive staffing firm that had placed her at Meridian Pacific received 2 calls from client companies on the same day the termination was announced. Name. Both callers asked the same question, which was whether the firm had other placements they should be aware of. The agency removed her from active placement and did not explain why beyond citing a client fit review. Name. Front desk work runs on reputation. Hers now arrived in rooms before her LinkedIn profile did. What Eleanor did in the weeks that followed surprised the general counsel, who had prepared a detailed memo on litigation options that ran to 22 pages and involved numbers with a great many zeros. Name. I don't need the zeros, Eleanor told her. I need the next person who comes through that door to feel like they belong there before anyone asks their name. Name. The building review took 3 weeks. Access ramps to all 3 entrances were widened and resurfaced. The main entrance sensor was repaired. Name. The revolving door timing was adjusted for a 4-second slower cycle, which required a vendor visit, but cost considerably less than the concrete work. Name. The parking cone policy was updated to require assigned property manager approval before any access route could be blocked, even temporarily. Name. The front desk counter was rebuilt over a long weekend in January. The new design included a section on the right side angled low where a person in a wheelchair could roll up and look the person behind the desk in the eye without either of them having to compensate. Name. It cost $18,400. Meridian Pacific announced the Welcome to Standard initiative in February, funded at $4 million and administered by Eleanor directly. Name. Every client-facing employee in the company's 3 offices attended in-person sessions, not webinars. Name. The sessions included time with disability advocates, immigration attorneys, and people who had been turned away from professional buildings in the same way Eleanor had been turned away, and who came and told their stories in a conference room that had a low desk and level sight lines. Name. Darnell Okafor's application was reviewed by 3 people. He was offered an entry-level analyst position in March. He started the Monday after his graduation ceremony. Name. At his onboarding, someone from HR mentioned that his offer had come out of a correction to a flawed upload system. Name. He said he knew. He said there might be 16 others still waiting. HR checked. There were 11. They were contacted that week. Name. The coffee station role was filled by a part-time employee who was also completing a culinary certificate at PCC. Name. Her first day was the same week as Darnell's. She had no idea why the previous barista's position had become permanent and full-time. Name. She found out 6 months later from a coworker and sent Eleanor a handwritten note that arrived at the office on a Tuesday and sat on Eleanor's desk for the rest of the afternoon. Name. Carol Simons retired in April on her own timeline as planned. At her last day celebration in the conference room, she made a toast. Name. She said that in 17 years she had seen the firm become many things and refused to become others. She said she hoped the version that was coming would be one they were proud to explain to strangers. Name. Thomas Bellamy sent Eleanor a postcard from somewhere outside Tucson in May. It said, "I built the house. You fixed the door." Name. That's the better job. Marcus Webb had 8 months left before his own retirement. He completed them. At his last day, he asked to address the new security staff, 7 people in total, sitting in a circle in the 3rd floor training room. Name. He told the story of that morning in November. He did not make himself the villain. He did not let himself entirely off the hook either. Name. He told them, 6 years at this desk, and the most important thing I ever did was stop moving my hands. Name. He told them, the person who looks like nobody might be everybody. You will not know, so you treat everyone like today is the day you find out. Name. In June, Portland Business Monthly put Eleanor on the cover. She wore the charcoal blazer, the armor side of the closet, photographed in front of the rebuilt lobby entrance where the access ramp was clean and wide and empty of parking cones and anything else that did not belong there. Name. The headline read, "The New Majority." She kept a copy in her desk, not framed, face up. The parking cone that had blocked the access ramp on the morning of November 18th was taken to the building's storage room and tagged for disposal. Name. Someone from facilities found a sticky note on it in Eleanor's handwriting during the January renovation. It said, "Not near any door that anyone needs." Name. Please. The note stayed on the cone. The cone stayed in the back of the storage room, where it served as something between a warning and a monument. Name. 7 months later, on another Monday morning, rain moved through Portland the way it always does in June, softly and persistently, without malice. Name. The lobby of Meridian Pacific on NW 11th Avenue looked almost exactly the same as it had in November. Same terrazzo. Name. Same waterfall feature, murmuring against the black granite. Same 40-foot run of lobby between the entrance and the front desk. Name. Almost the same. The access ramp outside was wider now, and heated, and perfectly clear. The main entrance revolving door moved at a speed that allowed for a wheelchair, a cane, a person walking slowly for any reason at all. Name. The front desk had a low section on the right where the sight line was level. Behind that section, a young man named Jerome worked Tuesday through Friday mornings. Name. He had been hired through the Welcome Standard program. His chair, like Eleanor's, was manual. His smile was the kind that did not require instruction. Name. At 9:03, the side door opened, and a man came in slowly. He was older, wearing a windbreaker that had been waterproofed so many times the fabric had gone stiff. Name. He held a folder against his chest and looked at the terrazzo the way people look at good things they are not sure they deserve to walk on. Name. Jerome waved him to the low section of the desk. "Good morning," he said. "Come on in. What can we help you with?" Name. The man explained, apologizing twice, that he was there about a matter involving a small business grant application. He had been told to speak with someone on the 5th floor. Name. He was very sorry to bother anyone. It was probably a small thing. "It's not a small thing," Jerome said, already pulling up the directory. Name. "Anyone who needs us, that's a real thing. What's your name?" 2 minutes later, the man sat near the waterfall feature with a cup of coffee, watching the rain through the lobby glass. Name. Nobody filmed him. Nobody had any reason to. 30 floors up, Eleanor Hargrove had the lobby feed open in the corner of her monitor. Name. She did that some mornings. She did not watch for problems. She watched the way a person watches a garden they spent a long time planting. Name. To see if the seeds came up, she had 2 things on the shelf behind her desk. The parking cone's sticky note framed. Name. And the visitor authorization that had spent a morning on a marble counter face down, now mounted face up, in a frame with no label on it, because the story was the label. Name. People asked her sometimes, in interviews and in boardrooms and in the quiet conversations that happen after the official meetings end, whether she thought about the woman at the desk. Name. Whether she was angry, whether she wished it had gone differently. She gave the same answer each time. "I think about the ramp," she said. Name. And the parking cone on it. "I think about the 11 applications caught in a broken upload system. I think about the 4 years of incident reports on a barista who kept being kind." Name. People like the one at that desk exist everywhere. They exist because buildings let them, because systems let them, because nobody looked at what the pattern meant until the wrong person showed up to prove it. Name. She paused. I couldn't fix her. I'm not sure anyone could, but I could fix what made her possible. So I did. Name. Outside, Portland rain moved steadily off the Willamette and into the Pearl District streets. Name. Down on NW 11th, a woman with a cane came through the lobby's main entrance, moving carefully on the wet terrazzo, and looked up at the chandelier, and then at the waterfall, and then at the desk, where Jerome was already reaching for a cup and waving her toward the low section with the level sight line. Name. The loudest revenge, it turned out, was not a lawsuit. It was not a firing, or a viral clip, or a cover story. Name. It was a wider ramp, a lower counter, a warm cup and a level eye contact, and a voice that said, "Come on in," before anyone asked what you were worth. Name. Wealth, Eleanor had decided, had an address. It had just spent 9 years checking the wrong credentials at the door. Name. Real talk for a moment. It's your narrator. I told you this story because people get read in a lobby before they open their mouths. Name. Every day. The chair, the jacket, the accent, the cane. And the strange part, the infuriating, clarifying, true part, is that basic decency costs exactly nothing. Name. 0. It requires no information, no authorization, no chain of approval. You can be Jerome at that desk before you ever know who's coming through the door. Name. So here is your question. If you had been standing in that lobby at 9:07, before anyone knew her name, before the elevator opened and the CEO came running, what would you have done? Name. Be honest with yourself. Drop your answer in the comments. I read them. The honest ones are always the most useful ones. Name. If this one landed somewhere real, pass it to someone who needs the reminder that you never know who's rolling through the door. Name. And subscribe, because there are more of these stories that are true to life in all the ways that count, waiting to be told. Until then, check your lobby. Keep the ramp clear.